Hello, this is Hazel Jane Tarot, and welcome to part 3 of my Oracle deck collection video series. Thank you for watching. Today I've grouped together the Oracle decks that I have that deal with using figures from pre-existing religious and cultural, different religious systems and different cultures. I know there's been some controversy about these types of decks. On the positive side, some people think that they're great when they include a whole range of different religions and cultures from around the world, thereby, having a real diversity represented within them. Whereas other people find that more problematic if a deck creator who's from outside of a culture uses a goddess or a saint or a figure from a culture that they're not part of, and maybe to the people from within that culture maybe might misrepresent that holy figure that they've chosen to include in the deck. And I honestly can't comment on that particularly. I'm from an Irish Catholic background, and for my part, the Catholic saints or Celtic goddesses that might be represented in some of these decks, sometimes the creator might have chosen an aspect of that figure to highlight and to be the focus for that card that might not be the defining quality of that goddess or of that saint, from my prior knowledge, from my cultural background. But there's nothing that I've found particularly problematic for me personally in any of those depictions. But of course, that is not to say that somebody who's from another cultural background might not find the way a goddess or a figure from their culture is depicted, they might find that problematic. So I can't really comment on that in regards to these decks. But so I'm just going to show the decks that I have, and I can only comment on them from my own rather limited knowledge of world religions and so on, how I have found them to work with. And I would very much welcome the opinions of people from other cultural traditions and backgrounds of if they have found these decks positive to work with, or if they find them more difficult to work with because of the way they've presented figures, because there's definitely a lot I would have to learn in that regard as well. So I'll maybe start with the goddess focused decks that I've got. And this one, the Goddess Oracle, was the first one that I got. So this is by Amy Sophia Marashinsky and illustrated by Hrana Janto, and it's a mass market edition, or a mass market deck published by US Games, so it's fairly easy to get. It has quite a substantial guidebook that comes with it, and I have trimmed mine. So as you can see, it's in this little cardboard insert, and my deck cards are smaller than the space, but they used to be that size. The deck mod that I've done on this is completely inspired by Dawn Michelle at Boho Tarot, who had done this modification. So they previously had quite a large white border, and I chopped off the band from across the top, down the sides, and some of the bottom, to get them looking like this, with the little band at the bottom and the with the keyword and the name of the goddess on it. And then the back then ends up looking like that. So I'll just show you a few of the cards in this deck. The art is really very lovely. I mean, the drawings are really nice. This Bloodiveth from she's a Welsh goddess character, I believe, and this was my stalker card last year. I pulled that card again and again and again and again, and the message of the card, it's not one you want to keep pulling over and over again. But they really are very lovely, really lovely cards to look at. So you can see that for each of the goddesses, that have been chosen, there is a keyword associated with it, which really is focusing in on one particular aspect of that goddess. And they're from sort of like you've got the likes of Demeter there from a sort of Greek ancient mythology, and then you have figures from current world religions as well, all sort of mixed in together. And I know I've seen discussions online as well about whether all of these are goddesses exactly, or some of them are maybe defined in slightly different ways within the religions that the religion of origin that they come from. But they are from a very broad, diverse range of current, as I say, and past religious and mythical sort of systems. So in the guidebook's really pretty good. You've got a poem about each one. You have a bit of the mythology of the background of that goddess, and the meaning of the card, and then there's a ritual associated with each one, kind of like a guided meditation, which are quite difficult to follow from just when it's read, because they're often a lot of visualization attached to it that you sort of need to have read to you. But I believe somebody has read them on YouTube. They're so you can listen to them on YouTube if you wanted to. But anyway, these that's that particular goddess deck, and I know a lot of people that have talked about that being their favorite goddess deck. I only have two that are specifically focused on feminine deities, and this is the other one, Megan Watterson's Divine Feminine Oracle, which I bought last summer when I was in Kildare on a little bit of a pilgrimage around the sites associated with the goddess Bridget and Saint Bridget in the Irish Catholic Celtic sort of tradition, and I got this in a little shop in Kildare when I was there to visit those sites. So it sort of had a nice resonance for me from that. Megan Watterson has written another book specifically about Mary Magdalene, and that's one I haven't read yet. But in this book, in this deck, you have a mixture of kind of mythical or religious figures and historical figures. So you might have, I'm trying to think of an example. So you have Our Lady of Guadalupe here, for example. You have the Celtic goddess Bridget, but then you also have Saint Bridget. So there's a real mixture of different figures. Mary of Nazareth, white buffalo calf woman, and a number of these, like if I haven't pulled the card yet, I haven't read the book from cover to cover, so I am not terribly familiar with all of them because they're from lots of different traditions. But yes, some of them are historical figures that show that kind of energy in action. So it's the divine feminine rather than a goddess deck, because it's a mixture of someone like Joan of Arc, and then people like Isis. That was one of the cards that we just flicked through there. So there are quite a lot of Christian Catholic figures in this, but then there are figures from other traditions as well. I haven't had a huge amount of success working with this deck yet. I think it's very interesting, and certainly it's educational as well in a way for me, discovering new divine feminine figures from different world traditions and so on. But I haven't had great success reading with it. And I don't know if the art is something that doesn't hugely, the light shining in everybody's face has made everybody quite white and there's a kind of I think it's supposed to be sort of a mystical light around each figure that is kind of blurs the figure in a way that maybe it's just not my taste. I mean, it is, I think, very thoughtfully put together, but I'm just not entirely sure about it yet. And those are the backs, which I do really like those backs actually. But yes, I have a bit more work to do with that one. I'm not really sure if it's going to be one for me or not. I've got 2 Kyle Gray decks. And if you're familiar with Kyle Gray at all, he works a lot with angels, is a big part of his belief system, and the angels come into both of these decks. The Keepers of the Light is a little bit of an older one, and you can see both have artwork by Lily Moses. This one was, a friend had this, and she kind of had felt she'd come to the end of the line of working with it and passed it on to me. So this is a secondhand deck that I was gifted. It's not one I would have ever bought, but somehow anytime I've actually read with it, it has been quite accurate for whatever's been going on in my life at the time. The message has been pretty spot on. It's really bright and colourful, kind of cartoonish, almost quality to the art. And you can see you've got a mixture of divine figures from different religious traditions again represented. But here, because it's not a goddess or divine feminine deck, you've got a mixture of male and female characters, which is nice, actually gives it a bit of balance. But you've a mixture of, because this is Keepers of the Light, you've a mixture of a lot of very different types of people. And there are angels, there are gods and goddesses, there are ascended masters of various kinds, and you know, if you don't share Kyle Gray's worldview and religious view, you know, some of the people depicted might resonate with you more than others. So once again, there we have Bridget. You know, and I think I prefer the art in this deck, to be honest, to the art in the Divine Feminine Oracle, but that's just, I guess it's just my taste. Maybe with divine figures, in a way, having them drawn, like in the Goddess Oracle, or in this deck, sits better with me than having photographs of models posing as those gods and goddesses. But no, I'm just sort of thinking out loud. I don't really know if that's why. Like Gaia, Joan of Arc again, Mary Magdalene again. So you see a lot of some of the similar figures coming up. But then in this deck you have people like the angelic figures like Faith and Holy Amethyst. And then you also have these kind of so you've Commander Ashtar, the Divine Protector. These more kind of they're from outside of the sort of religious traditions, that I find it hard to explain what these types of characters are, to be honest. I would need to read the book a bit more to understand. But as I say, there's a real mix of angels and of ascended masters and gods and goddesses from different religious traditions. So that is not unlike then the Angels and Ancestors Oracle cards deck, which sort of follows a similar kind of pattern. The style of the cards is very, very similar, although the cardstock is more of a matte cardstock, more to contemporary tastes, where the Keepers of the Light maybe is made a bit longer ago. I'm not keen on the back of this deck because I like them to be symmetrical, and that isn't. But the colours are lovely. And the art is absolutely beautiful in this deck. Once again, it draws on a lot of different cultures and religious traditions and maybe more cultural traditions than simply different religions in this particular deck, because what you've got are a mixture of what he calls sacred ones, which are really the ancestors, so different archetypes from the histories and traditions of different cultures around the world. And then, and some of them are quite universal archetypes that would exist in a lot of different cultures. And then you have guardians and messengers, which are angels essentially, and then warrior symbols, which I think he says were divinely revealed to him in the deck. So it's a bit of a mixture of things. Peacekeeper, I believe, was the card that I pulled persistently when I first started working with this deck. I think I pulled it 3 times in 1 week, and its message was very apt at the time. Elder Oracle. Wise One. Traveler. Do you know what? I particularly like that one. Medicine Mother. Great Teacher. So you've got this mix of archetypes and figures sort of from different cultures. And so they're the ancestors. And then you have the angels. And there's more of them. More of the ancestor cards. And then you have the angels. So, and they're really beautiful. Mirror Guardian. Sorry, I'm getting my own light there. Medicine Guardian. Magic Guardian. Guardian Angel. And then you finally have the magical symbols that he was talking about. So that goes through the seasons, and then these different items, the broken arrow, the drum, and so on. So you can see these come from different world traditions, and I guess a lot of people feel very differently about the use of different world religions and traditions in a deck and mixing them all together in this way. It's but the art anyway and the card stock is lovely in that deck, and I have found again it quite, when I have done a reading with it, the messages have always seemed quite appropriate for whatever's been going on in my life at the time. And if I compare using those 2 Kyle Gray decks with a mixture of sort of male and female figures to the 2 female only decks that I've shown you, I've probably had more effective readings with the more mixed decks. And then this other deck that I've kept in this for this video as well is the Mythic Oracle. Now I bought this at the same time as I was stalking the Mythic Tarot on eBay trying to get a copy, which, as you know, I was successful because I showed that in my deck collection video. So I thought the Mythic Oracle would be nice if I was pairing it with an Oracle deck. And my intention was really to sort of read more about Greek mythology and understand those stories better through working with both that tarot and this Oracle deck, and reading other books and so on, which I'm sort of partway through that, but I definitely am not an expert by any means yet on Greek mythology. I visited Greece a few years ago and went to Delphi and went to some of the other sort of temples and so on, and that sort of fostered an interest really. So this is by Carissa Malado and Michelle Lee Phelan, and it's published by Simon Pulse Beyond Words. The backs of the decks are awful. I really don't like these backs because they're not symmetrical again. I have edged this deck with a bronze Sharpie, which I think helped because they have a really, really thin, very flexible cardstock, which is quite papery, and edging it made it feel a little bit more luxurious or a bit nicer to work with. It's maybe needs touched up a bit. And yeah, so it just basically depicts a range of characters from Greek mythology. So we have Gaia, Terra. And the art is lovely. I don't love every single card, but mostly they're really lovely. One thing I'm not keen on is this here, the subtitle. So the name of the god or goddess is in, or the hero or whoever it is on this blue band, but then the subtitle being below that on the gold just doesn't look right to me. And it would affect your ability to trim it if you're going to do a modification on the deck. Maybe cut off those borders, you know, the way the little number digs into the picture there, and the way this sort of overlaps with the blue band. I think it would be hard to do a tidy trim on it, which is why I just edged it. So Demeter, it's lovely. Uranus, the Father, Atlas, responsibility, Athena, and much like, you know, other decks, like for example, the Keepers of the Light Oracle or the Goddess Oracle, there's been a keyword chosen to pull out a particular aspect of that figure as the meaning behind that card. So I think with a lot of these sort of deity focused decks, I know some people, and of course this is a mixture of deities and just figures from the mythological stories like Helen of Troy. I know people have used these in two ways, like either to pull a card at random in a reading as part of a spread, or as a supplement to a reading, and just work with the message of that particular card. Or if somebody wants to develop that particular quality in their own life, or to work with that deity particularly that day or that month, people have chose to pull that card out on purpose and have it displayed to work with over the course of that period. And this is a little guidebook that goes with it, and it just fills you in a little bit on the myth behind the character, and then the message that is associated with that card. So those are my decks that are associated with different religious traditions, god and goddess based decks, and so on. I'd be really interested to hear your opinion about this type of deck, if you worked with any of these decks, if you've enjoyed working with them, any things that you think work well or don't work well in this type of deck, because as I'm sure you can tell from the way I've been talking about them, I'm still trying to make up my mind about that myself. But one positive I've found from working with this type of deck is they have educated me to a certain degree about different world traditions, and they've been more of a jumping off point. If I find a description or a depiction of a particular deity compelling, then it's a jumping off point to go and find out more about it from other sources, which I found quite a positive thing. But I'd be really interested to hear what you think about this type of deck, or if you've worked with any of these decks. So I would love it if you subscribe to my channel. There's one more video in this deck collection series of my Oracle decks, and I will list the other decks or the other videos in the series below. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.